Bad boy Charlie Sheen and 80s favorite Jon Cryer played mismatched brothers Charlie and Alan Harper in the smash sitcom 2.5 Men. But they had a stellar supporting cast of heavy hitters, some of whom are no longer with us. There are few bigger comedy legends than actor, writer, director, and producer Carl Reiner. Reiner crafted some of the wackiest comedies of the 20th century, including Oh God with George Burns, The Jerk and the Man with Two Brains with Steve Martin, and Summer Rental with John Candy. In front of the camera, Carl had a recurring role on 2.5 Men, playing TV producer Marty Pepper, Charlie's mother's boyfriend.
Marty, these are my sons, Charlie and Alan.
Is it important which is which?
Though he was better known as a producer, writer, and director, Marty Pepper was by no means Reiner's only on-screen role. His acting reel is actually longer than his directing resume.
Nice to see you, Mr. Pepper.
Mr. Pepper was my father. Just call me the guy banging your mother.
Modern audiences may remember him for his role as Saul Bloom in all 3 Ocean's 11 movies, but he also had small parts in many of his own films, and he played the voice of God himself in Mel Brooks's History of the World Part 1. His final movie performance came in Toy Story 4, where he played Carl Rhinoceros. At the age of 98 in 2020, Reiner died of natural causes. Though most of the principal cast of 2.5 Men is thankfully still with us, there's one series regular we've lost, Conchata Ferrell. Ferrell played Berta, the gruff, sarcastic housekeeper who was never afraid to speak her mind.
Looks great, Berta. What's your secret?
I bought it pre-cooked from the back of a truck. I don't know that I trust the stuffing.
Berta didn't always get along with the Harper kids, but she was always loyal, and her role only got bigger when star Charlie Sheen departed the show. Ferrell stayed with the series through all 12 seasons, making Berta the most iconic role of her long career, which is saying a lot because she appeared in a number of classics. Back in the 1980s, Ferrell was known for her role as good-natured neighbor Helen in Edward Scissorhands, and soon after, she joined the cast of LA Law as Susan Bloom. In the mid-90s, Ferrell starred as Dr. Strassinger in the final 2 seasons of the John Ritter sitcom Hearts of Fire. A 3-time Emmy Award nominee, Ferrell died from cardiac arrest on October 12, 2020 at the age of 77. In later seasons of 2.5 Men, Courtney Thorne-Smith played Alan's girlfriend, Lindsay. As their relationship became a bigger part of the show, we met Lindsay's mother, Jean, who was played by Georgia Engel in a 2-episode story arc. Engel had been a principal cast member of the landmark sitcom The Mary Tyler Moore Show in the 1970s. There, she starred for 5 seasons as Georgette, Ted Baxter's girlfriend. Engel got her start in the 1971 film Taking Off alongside Lynn Carlin and Buck Henry, and her performance earned her a BAFTA nomination. This nomination was just the first of many. She was twice nominated for an Emmy during her run on Mary Tyler Moore, and in the 2000s, she scored 3 nominations for playing the Barone mother-in-law Pat on Everybody Loves Raymond. In 2012, she reunited with her former Mary Tyler Moore co-star Betty White on Hot in Cleveland in the recurring role of White's friend Mamie Johnson. Engel, who was a Christian Scientist and didn't consult doctors, died in 2019 of unknown causes. She was 70 years old. When it comes to iconic character actors, Harry Dean Stanton is royalty. There are any number of classic films and TV shows that you'd remember him from, and even more you've probably forgotten he was a part of. That includes his role as engineer Brett in Ridley Scott's Alien, his brief appearance as an FBI agent in The Godfather Part 2, and his cameo in The Avengers. In a 2004 episode of 2.5 Men, Stanton played himself in an episode in which Charlie joined a men's club that also included Sean Penn and Elvis Costello.
Do any of you get up in the middle of the night to pee?
Sure. Occasionally.
Sometimes I don't even get up.
Stanton's television career began in the 50s with parts on westerns like The Rifleman, Gunsmoke, and Bat Masterson. Over the next few decades, he guest starred in just about every major show on the air, including The Untouchables, The Fugitive, and Bonanza in the 1960s, Mary Hartman in the 1970s, and Laverne and Shirley in the 80s. His final TV role was Carl Rodd in David Lynch's long-awaited Twin Peaks revival.
Lucky fell down.
Let's not make a production out of it.
After a prolific career that included dozens of famous films, he bowed out with Frank and Ava, released a year after his death in 2017. 2.5 Men had a lot of success recruiting legendary comic stars to play small guest roles, from Carl Reiner to Carol Kane. Not to be left out was Cloris Leachman. She played Charlie's wealthy neighbor Norma, who offers Alan an indecent proposal of sorts. Like Georgia Engel, Leachman is probably best known for her role on The Mary Tyler Moore Show, where she played another sitcom neighbor, this time the snooty Phyllis Lindstrom. But even that was 2 decades after her first major TV role, starring as the secretary on Charlie Wild Private Detective. Later that same decade, Leachman had a recurring role on the classic Lassie TV series, and after her stint on The Mary Tyler Moore Show, she reprised her role as Phyllis in the spin-off Rhoda before getting her own series, Phyllis. Sitcom aficionados will also remember her for roles on The Facts of Life and as Grandma Ida in Malcolm in the Middle. But perhaps Leachman's most iconic performance was as the unforgettable Frau Blucher in Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein. She died in 2021 after a remarkable 8 decades on screen. As big of a deal as it was for ZZ Top to show up on 2.5 Men, the bearded bad boys weren't the biggest rock stars to cameo on the series. That title belongs to Eddie Van Halen, the man who inherited the mantle of King of Rock and Roll while fronting Van Halen. Formed in the 1970s, Van Halen's early roster consisted of brothers Alex and Eddie Van Halen, bassist Michael Anthony, and legendary frontman David Lee Roth. Together, they wrote some of the genre's biggest hits, including Runnin' with the Devil, Jump, and Hot for Teacher. Over the years, Van Halen went through a number of personnel changes, most notably cycling through singers Roth, Sammy Hagar, and Gary Cherone. Eddie was a mainstay, however, and since his emergence as the band's fast-fingered guitarist, was widely considered one of the best to ever play the instrument, with Rolling Stone ranking him at number 4 on their list of greatest guitarists of all time, behind only Jimmy Page, Chuck Berry, and Jimi Hendrix. Van Halen was married to sitcom star Valerie Bertinelli, with whom he had a son, Wolfgang, now a musician in his own right. Sadly, the elder Van Halen suffered a number of health problems, including a bout with throat cancer. He died following a stroke in October 2020 at the age of 65. Though he was never quite an A-list megastar, Michael Clarke Duncan was just as good as any of them. Beloved for playing both terrifying villains and gentle giants, some may not even realize that Duncan had a small recurring role in 2.5 Men as Jerome Bennett, a former championship-winning NFL player and Charlie's neighbor. Jerome was also the father of Jake Harper's one-time girlfriend, Celeste. Duncan began his acting career in 1995 with projects like a small part in the film Friday and a guest spot on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He showed up in Armageddon as Bear and guest starred on Living Single and The Jamie Foxx Show in the late 90s. In 1999, Duncan delivered a star-making performance in the Tom Hanks prison drama The Green Mile, for which he was nominated for a Best Supporting Actor Oscar. From there, he went bigger, with major roles in Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes and a turn as the villainous Kingpin in Ben Affleck's Daredevil, a role he reprised in Spider-Man the New Animated Series. In 2012, Duncan died of a heart attack at just 54. Audiences watching 2.5 Men may not have recognized actor Mike Connors when he guest starred in the 2007 episode Prostitutes and Gelato. In the episode, Charlie's mother Evelyn meets a new man played by Robert Wagner, whom she immediately ditches for another man in Vegas named Hugo, played by Connors.
Come on, Evie, the Viagra is starting to make my ears burn.
Hugo was Connors' first on-screen TV role in nearly a decade, but there was a day when he was a prime-time small-screen staple.
In a detective series, always be on your guard.
In the late 1960s and 70s, Connors played the title role in the detective series Mannix. It was a star-making role for Connors, who primarily worked as a guest actor on other shows since his debut in the early 50s. When Mannix came to an end, after an impressive 8 seasons and nearly 200 episodes, he went on to star in the short-lived Today's FBI. Late in his career, Connors returned to the role of guest actor, showing up in episodes of Walker, Texas Ranger, Diagnosis Murder, and The Commish in the 1990s. Semi-retired by the 2000s, his return to TV in 2.5 Men in 2007 turned out to be his final acting role. Connors retired after that and died in 2017 at the age of 91. Another TV legend to guest star on 2.5 Men was Orson Bean. Bean was another performer with a deep pedigree. In 1960, he played the title role in the Twilight Zone episode Mr. Beavis.
Mr. Beavis is accident-prone, a little vague, a little discombobulated, with a life that possesses all the security of a floating crap game.
He later voiced Bilbo Baggins in the animated Rankin Bass classic The Hobbit. Though many may remember him as a repeat guest on The Tonight Show and To Tell the Truth in the 1980s, 90s audiences no doubt recognize him as Lauren Bray from the hit medical drama Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. In 2.5 Men, Bean played Norman, the husband of a woman Charlie has a brief tryst with in Does This Smell Funny to You? Some of Bean's later roles included guest appearances on How I Met Your Mother and Modern Family, as well as the recurring role of Roy Bender on Desperate Housewives. At the movies, he was less prolific, but he turned up in Being John Malkovich and Inner Space, and had a small role in 2018's The Equalizer 2. Bean died after he was struck by a speeding vehicle while walking on Venice Boulevard in Los Angeles in 2020. He was 91. Jon Polito is one of those actors you've seen everywhere, but you may not know his name. Famous for playing gangster types, his most memorable roles include parts in The Rocketeer and The Crow, as well as several Coen Brothers films like Barton Fink and Miller's Crossing. Likewise, he had a leading role in the 1981 TV miniseries The Gangster Chronicles. But Polito was more than just a wise guy, and in 2.5 Men, he played Mr. Sharipa in the Season 6 episode He Smelled the Ham He Got Excited, just one in a long line of guest appearances on classic sitcoms. In 1998, Polito was in the Seinfeld episode The Reverse Peephole as Silvio, Jerry's landlord. He also appeared in episodes of Mad About You, Roseanne, and Veronica's Closet in the 1990s, while he could be seen in theaters in Coen Brothers films The Hudsucker Proxy and The Big Lebowski. His biggest role on the small screen, though, came in the 2001 sci-fi series The Chronicle, where he was a series regular playing journalist Donald Stern. In 2016, Polito died of multiple myeloma, passing away at the age of 65.